How would someone who considers themselves expendable act on this episode of the StoryPod podcast? Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Hello, friend. Happy Friday. I'm so happy to be with you again. Happy to see you. My name is Ashley. I'm your Creative BFF. On this podcast, we practice story, girl. Okay? We try to build our storytelling muscles. We're trying to get buff in the storytelling gym, and what that looks like right now on this channel quite a bit is answering story questions from Reddit. If you have a question for your story that we can kind of work out together here on this podcast, please feel free to shoot me a message. There are links below where you can find me, okay? And we also try some different things out and whatever. I have other plans and stuff that I haven't implemented yet. But today we are doing a Reddit question, okay? And I'm just gonna jump right in and read it to you. I think we've gotten through the salient points of the intro. So the Reddit question is from the r/writing help subreddit. What would someone who considers himself to be expendable act like? I am working on a project involving a somewhat depressed main character who starts off merely going through the motions, believing their life and existence is little more than just another replaceable cog in the machine, so to speak. But over the course of a high seas adventure, ends up learning that they too are a valuable person who deserves love and appreciation. However, now that I'm actually trying to implement that into the plot, I realize I don't know how such an attitude would translate into the character's actions or behavior. How can I effectively show my protagonist's thought processes, especially in the earlier parts of the story, without spelling it all out directly? Any help is appreciated. So, where I would kind of start trying to approach this if I was writing this character, the first nugget that I would decide on is, how does this character internalize this belief about just being another cog in the machine? What does it do inside them? Does it make them angry? Are they, sorry, I wrote some notes. Okay. So forgive me. I'm going to be looking at my notes also. Does it make him prone to him or her, whatever, but I'm gonna say him because it feels like a him. Does he say? Doesn't matter. I'm gonna say him. Does he get into fights and things like that? Is he aggressive and angry about it? Or is he just quiet and to himself? Does he kind of have a death wish? Is he just robotic and numb? All these kind of things. Not really trying to be in relationships with anybody, that kind of stuff. So if we're looking at someone who believes that they are worthless and it makes them angry, and it also depends on, does it depend on? I don't know if it depends on, but another aspect of it is, are we starting the story where this person works on a ship, or are they starting the story kind of living a sort of normal life, quote unquote normal life, not connected to a high seas adventure? So if they're just living in the coastal town, in the port town that the adventure starts from, if they're angry, does it manifest in things like they're always getting into fights with people because they don't care? If you say anything, they're gonna fight you. Because it's I don't care. What does it matter if I go to jail or if I get killed by this person? They beat me to death, then I end up in a ditch. What does it matter? Because I'm worthless and expendable anyway. So they're getting into fights. They're aggressive. They have a short temper, that kind of thing. Are they okay, so if they are, if he is super quiet, like a shadow, and or numb and robotic, does he just basically anytime anyone wants to be friendly with him, perhaps make a relationship that's meaningful in any kind of way, does he just kind of brush them off and not basically try to get close to anyone because he's like, basically, my life is worthless. There's no point in me connecting to this person. And if he has like a death wish, you know, because he's reckless out here in these streets, you know, it's like, why would I, you know, connect with somebody and bring them into my reckless sort of world, right? And could get somebody else hurt potentially. Does he just like do as he's told without thinking or question? Do things like if people are bullying him, it doesn't matter. He doesn't care. He doesn't even respond to it because he's like, nothing really matters. Love is all we need. So that could also look like, if he has a job, like, does he just not go above and beyond? Like, he just basically does barely enough to just kind of coast in the middle, not attracting any kind of attention, either good or bad. Does he take on like on the kind of the opposite end? Does he take on the most risky task? Now this is kind of, I think would be more so if he is working on the ship at the start of the story, like the boat or whatever, for the high seas adventure. Is he the one who volunteers for the more risky things, or just he's always the one chosen for it, doesn't matter, and he just goes and does it without any sort of pushback or anything like that, because he's like, I'm expendable anyway, doesn't matter? Is he just about hedonistic pleasure, where he's like, I just need to find pleasure wherever I can, so that looks like drinking, perhaps, or some other sort of drug use within the logic of your world. I don't know if it's like a magical fantasy thing, so maybe there is like an opium type of drug that's not super heavy, hardcore, if you don't want him to be like addicted to a drug, but just like recreational substance use to feel good in the moment. You know, fly by night relationships, if you catch my drift, you know, little, you know, red light special here and there. Just, you know, doesn't even care, just to feel something for a moment, and then he goes back into his numbness, because what he does doesn't matter anyway in his mind. Does he do, outside of like his job and his work, does he do other risky behaviors to get adrenaline? You know, like those kind of people who are parkouring off of 100-story buildings, you know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff. Or speed racing around curves. Now, obviously, speed racing around curves is not necessarily going to take place in this story, but that kind of mindset of, I need to feel something. And this, I'm not saying people who are like daredevils in real life, this is their thinking. I don't know. But for him, it could be the core of his thinking, where he's just doing things to feel a momentary rush of adrenaline. This ties into the seeking of hedonistic pleasures. Let's see, what other things did I think of? I think that might be the main thing. I think that to start to figure out how this type of person would ask, I think that the important first step would be, how does he respond to that belief within himself? You know, what is his reaction to that belief? And then that is going to tell you, that'll start to inform the types of actions that he does. So, like I said, if he's angry about it, he's going to be maybe more aggressive, more prone to fighting, maybe more risk taking, more, you know, doing whatever type of thing. If he is kind of more internalized with it, more on the depressed end. I mean, they did say somewhat depressed, but I think I heard, and I could be wrong, I'm not well versed in this, so please forgive me if I'm incorrect, but I think that I have heard that at least one of the manifestations of depression can be anger. It doesn't necessarily always look like just sleeping all day and, that kind of thing on the couch in a dark room necessarily. I don't know. Please forgive me if I'm incorrect. So with that understanding, if I'm not wrong, even if he is depressed, that can still manifest in anger and aggression. If he is quieter with it, what does that look like? The doing the bare minimum on the job, not engaging in relationships with anybody, even friendships, if he is robotic and he's cut off the feeling side of himself, there could be some crossover with the quieter to himself type of thing in terms of how he is on the job, just doing what he's told, no questions asked, really kind of turning off his mind and just being a literal cog in the wheel. So that would be how I would begin to approach it. And that's kind of like, I think, how I would approach any sort of how, quote unquote, how does this character act? How does he or she show this belief, rather than having to tell they believe this about themselves. And I think that that's the core, is like, okay, they have this belief. I hope I didn't do anything. They have this belief. I accidentally pressed my keyboard. They have this belief about themselves. How do they feel about that belief? What emotions does that cause in them? And then out of those emotions from that belief elicits, I use that word correctly, I don't know. Then we can start to see logically actions that will flow. And I think that kind of helps to make it clearer how they would act in any particular situation based on that belief. I think I'm going to stop there. I think that's pretty much it. I think that's good enough to continue on as though this person is going to even hear this option. I'm sure by now they have figured out what they're going to do. But listen, have a wonderful weekend. I'm so glad to have spent a little bit of time with you today, friend. I hope that your projects are going well, okay? If you need any help with them, feel free to reach out. And listen, have a great weekend. And enjoy the rest of your Friday, okay? Bye!